I think that it's been harder to raise capital, which obviously makes it harder to grow. And I think there's a necessity for tech companies to be very clear on what the problem is that they're solving, and exactly how their particular tech can solve that.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow IT podcast. One of your hosts here, Trey King. And today we are very excited to have our guest, Innes Meldrum from AdhereTech with us. And we'll be diving a little bit into his story today, as well as, what his company does, and then some engaging insights into the technology industry. So make sure you stick around for this one. But without further ado, Innes, welcome.
Thank you, Treg. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, lovely. It's good to have you here. Ines, if you don't mind, if we can maybe kick things off, if you could please just introduce yourself to the listeners, as well as just a quick snippet of your story, please.
Sure, absolutely. So you can probably tell from my accent, not from the US, originally Scottish, although now based in the US and a proud American citizen. So I've got an engineering undergrad. I graduated in electrical and electronic engineering from Strathclyde in Scotland. Worked in tech industry, wireless telecommunications with Nortel Networks, Hewlett Packard, and then Agilent Technologies for about 10 years. Through a weird
All right.
series of circumstances, I then switched industries to move into marketing in Switzerland for Novartis. So this is kind of my career. I tend to make these kind of unusual shifts, I think. And I spent 14 years with Novartis, and then I worked for a series of pharmaceutical companies, including Otsuka, Japanese company. I was their chief commercial officer, and then was a biotech CEO for actually a hot minute. And we're trying to develop a psychedelic to treat uh, demoralization syndrome in cancer. Unfortunately,
Wow.
tough to raise investment. And then I was recruited to AdhereTech. It's a privately held company. And the reason that I was quite keen to make the switch back again is I just think healthcare is so inefficient. There's such a great unmet need there. And I think that technology, when it's applied appropriately, can have a huge impact. And I felt that AdhereTech, as it says in the name, we're about medication adherence. So I felt there's a huge opportunity for us to make a difference there.
Excellent. Tell me how did you get to be so passionate about it? What was your initial interest to, obviously not just AdhereTech, but let's say the health industry, right?
Yeah, I think it was probably I probably came into it rather naively. I was through a weird series of circumstances. I was offered a position in Novartis in Basel. Myself and my wife talked, and I said, "What the hell?" So we up sticks from Scotland, went to Switzerland, as I learned more, and in particular in the mental health space, there's such a huge unmet need there. There've been a lot of great medicines have come out over the years for oncology, heart disease, HIV, a lot of things have been moved forward. I feel that the mental health space, because of the complexity of the brain, we're really just scratching the surface and really understanding this. So I was involved in that fairly early in my career, and it's kind of been a passion of mine since then. And I think it's twofold. One side, the patient, the unmet need. The other side is actually the kind of intellectual stimulation because it's such a complex area.
Tell me, based on your expertise, what would you say is, or let me rather say, what trends do you think, what are you aware of with new trends happening in the market space we're playing in? What way is the wind blowing? What have you been noticing?
Yeah, so if I'll maybe give you a double-barreled answer, one on tech and one on kind of pharma and healthcare, because I
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, that'd be great.
tried across
That's
both.
awesome.
So I think if
Yeah,
we look at tech, clearly AI is
yeah.
king, and we're kind of on the second wave of that. If you go back 10 years, it was very popular, and I think it kind of failed to deliver then. I think it's different now. So I think the leveraging of large language models, especially in healthcare, for example, to identify risk profiles for patients and then you can take proactive steps to de-risk things. I think the the healthcare industry is a little bit slow. It's conservative, which is by design because you're dealing with people's health, so you've got to make sure there's safety first. But I do think that this wave of AI that's coming has the opportunity to make a huge difference there. And if you look at any pharma CEO pitch, AI, digital's front and center. And a lot of these companies now are actually creating digital health leaders, groups, everything like that to really take advantage of it. So I think there's growing acceptance of not just AI, but technology and how that can help
Mm.
healthcare, increase efficiencies, help patient outcomes, etc., things like that. I think that the timing is probably good. Then the reason I say that is pharma's under increasing pressure. You've probably all seen the recent election results,
Yeah,
and RFK is going to be the head of I think the
yeah,
FDA there, and so he's known not to be a fan of big pharma. So I think that there's going to be pressure there. Pharma's been facing a lot of pricing pressures, especially in the US, for an extended period of time. So it's getting harder now for patients to actually get on a new medicine. And without going into too much detail, it's because of payer consolidation, market access challenges. So it's getting more expensive to get a patient to actually receive a prescription. But then once they receive it, there's a myriad of factors that are causing them not to stay on the medicine as long. So
yeah.
it's on one hand, it's getting more expensive for pharma. On the other hand, they're not staying on as long. So that's hurting their profits. But I think this is where technology, again, efficiencies. So I think that technology appropriately applied, and you see pharma starting to do a lot of this with omni-channel, leveraging AI from a marketing perspective, etc. And there's really efficiencies in there as well. So I think that the two industries are actually coming closer together. There's kind of
Mhm.
convergence that's happening.
Excellent. And then I mean, I fully agree on you with with the AI from let's say 10, 12 years back and now there's such a big difference and it's like it's finding better traction now as well. And I mean AI for the last 2, 3 years, I mean it's been a buzzword everywhere, right? And then I mean if you just think about the amount of conferences and events that planned around this topic is it's crazy. It truly is. Tell me from a market sentiment point of view, what would be your take on that at the moment? Let's say for what you guys do as a business, that sentiment.
Yeah, so I think that there's been a bit of an investment winter, I would say, both biotech and tech. I think that it's been harder to raise capital, which obviously makes it harder to grow. And I think that there's a necessity for tech companies to be very clear on what the problem is that they're solving, and exactly how their particular tech can solve that. And then I think the other thing, and when you're selling into an industry like pharma, it's very data rich. It's a very high IQ, high analytic industry. You need to really come in with data because the first thing that I get asked every time I'm talking to somebody within pharma, have you got any data? And the good thing is at AdhereTech, we've actually got a lot of data, but that reassures people as well. So I do think that it's kind of if you went back to the dot-com bubble of the early 2000s,
Yeah,
people were making big bets. They were buying into things on nothing really. There was very little evidence. It was all about the future. That's really flipped now. I think investors, I think buyers are much more savvy. They're looking for data and evidence. So I do think if you're going to come to market, be clear on what the problem is you're solving, how
yeah,
you're solving it, and then have the proof to support it.
you support it. Interesting take. The I think everybody's dying to find out exactly, what is it what your company does. If you don't mind to elaborate a bit on that.
Yep, so it's a little bit in the name. So adhere tech. So medication adherence, everybody knows it's been an issue. It's been an issue for as long as people have been taking medicine. However, nobody's really cracked it. It's a difficult problem to solve because it's a human condition. Some diseases, medication adherence is slightly worse than others, but really it's a human condition, and we as humans struggle to establish new behaviors. And a good example would be if you look at all the gyms in January, they're full. By
Yeah,
February, they're back to normal again, which is it's just that. So what we have is we have a system that leverages cellular technology. So we work on the AT&T wireless system. What
Yeah.
we measure is when a patient takes a medicine and doesn't take the medicine. So we have a reminder system and we help patients stay adherent with their meds. And we actually change behaviors over time where we allow patients to become much more compliant with the doses and the dosing schedule that was prescribed by the physician. And we've evidence in over 28,000 patients across 30 different disease states, and we can show an uplift in persistency of about 50% across disease states in the first year in the commercial real world setting. And then in the clinical setting, we've got a lot of experience working with a lot of pharma academic centers to really prove that help de-risk clinical trials. One of the things I think people don't realize is that sometimes when a clinical trial fails, the industry as a whole really doesn't have insight into whether the patient was taking the medicine, A, or B, were they taking it as per the clinical trial protocol? And there's been some very high profile failures recently, actually, where unfortunately medication non-adherence was cited as the failure at a very late stage, which means that that's not great for patients because it could have been a great new drug, but also from an investor perspective, there's significant risk there. And I think that ironically, the technologies that are used right now really are not getting it done. And the main reason is patients struggle to engage with them. And I think,
Wow.
one of the things that may be of interest, I feel anyway, is how do you integrate technology successfully into healthcare, for example? And I think from a patient perspective, you need to make it as easy as possible for the patient.
Possible.
Anything that adds a little bit of friction is going to disproportionately reduce their willingness to engage in it. And I think that's where AdhereTech really differs because we have smart pill bottles. So a patient is used to
Yeah.
taking medicine from the pill, from
Yeah.
the bottle, and we do that, and we get very high patient satisfaction ratios because they feel it fits with their routine, but it helps them do something good for them and their families as well.
Geez, that is fascinating. Just for interest sake, because I actually used to work with other companies. We were, doing work for them.
Mm.
Tell me just things like, for example, HIPAA, right? Does that obviously play a important role when it comes to what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So HIPAA, cybersecurity,
Yeah,
all of this, the cybersecurity especially these days, and obviously HIPAA is related to that. So obviously we're FDA class one device, ISO 13485, we're HIPAA compliant, we're SOC 2 certified as well from a cybersecurity perspective. But when you're dealing with patient information, that's absolutely critical. And quite frankly, that's what would I say, floor seats. So that's the ticket to entry.
yeah, yeah. Tell me, and then I would actually like to talk about a bit, from a business point of view, a bit more general overview.
Mhm.
We always say that 30,000 view overview. From in your opinion, right? You've got a lot of experience, and what would you say from a mindset point of view, right, is needed to be a successful founder of a business? What would you say, is Treg,
I
it's
th-
this and this and this is what you need.
I think the first thing is resilience because it's not easy. I think especially when you're trying to do something new, by definition, you're usually challenging the status quo. And
Mm,
the status quo is the status quo for a reason because people are comfortable with it, they accept it, etc. So if you come in and try and challenge that, you have to be resilient because you're gonna get a lot of knockbacks, a lot of naysayers, everything like that. I think the second thing is you need to be passionate about it. I'm a big believer. I've been a sales rep at various points. Passion sells. If you can't be passionate about your solution, why would you expect anybody else to? And I think as the CEO or as a founder, it's vitally
mm,
important that you demonstrate that to your investors, to customers, but also to your own staff, because it's not going to be easy. It's a bit of a
yeah,
grind until you can get that little bit of wind behind you. And then the goal is how do you focus what are usually limited resources where they can have the maximum impact so you can really accelerate that. So I would say there's passion, resilience, and focus.
excellent. And then is there maybe one or two, I always call them nuggets, golden nuggets, some good piece of advice that you would, you know, maybe one or two things that you've learned throughout your career. You've got quite a colorful career up until now, that you've learned that you are willing to share to the younger guy, wanting to get into this kind of space, for example.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that really struck with me, there's going to be a lot of people who tell you you can't do something. What they're actually saying is that they can't do it or they're scared to do it. It's not that you can't do it. So you need to have that belief, and if you want to do something that's truly different,
Yeah.
you're going to have the majority of people telling you can't do it until you reach a tipping point, and then, success has many fathers and failures and orphans. So the thing I would just say is think about it, they're telling you they can't do it, or they don't want you to do it and be successful, because then they need to look at themselves. So, follow your own path. And I
Yeah.
think the second part is really follow your own path. As you said, I've had quite a kind of colorful, unusual career. I've spanned industries.
Mm.
I'm a big believer. Variety is the spice of life. And, I think there's so many opportunities, especially these days with travel, technology, to really learn so many different things to impact as many people as you possibly can. So I would really just embrace that variety. Take a risk. What's the worst that happens is you fail, but you learn something from it. And any time that I've done that, and I've failed plenty in my career, it's opened up other opportunities for me that would never otherwise have happened.
Yeah.
So, just lean in and trust yourself.
Excellent advice. No, I think there's a couple of guys that's going to write that down. The I need to thank you for your time, Ines. This was very, very insightful. I think a couple of us learned a lot. And tell me, we can the people get hold of you guys?
So we're at www.adheretech.com, and Innes Meldrum, I'm on LinkedIn. We have an AdhereTech web page on LinkedIn, but my email, i.meldrum@adheretech.com. If you're interested in learning more, please reach out.
Excellent. Ines, thanks for coming on today. This was fun.
Awesome. Great to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Take care.